Hey guys, it's Robbie. Let's cut to the chase. If you're a fan of rock music, you've probably seen this album cover a good number of times. The album, of course, is The Velvet Underground and Nico by, well, take a guess. It has an incredible amount of individual talent. Not only does Nico completely bring her A game and absolutely justify producer Andy Warhol's demanding she be on the album, but every member of the Velvet Underground absolutely kills it. One of those members was guitarist and frontman Lou Reed. Reed would eventually leave the group in 1970 and embark on a solo career. His 1972 album, Transformer, would prove to be a landmark album in the genre of glam rock, with songs such as Perfect Day, Satellite of Love, and a hit single, Walk on the Wild Side. A few years later, however, he would do something that nobody expected. In 1975, Reed put out Metal Machine Music. It should be noted that Reed had already done a fair bit of noise and avant-garde music during his time in the Velvet Underground. That being said, even his most devoted fans were a little taken aback by this. The 4 songs are nothing but feedback mixed at various speeds and volumes. As much as I do enjoy conventional melodies, I do have a soft spot for avant-garde music. I genuinely do enjoy listening to Revolution 9 by the Beatles, and I even own a Merzbow vinyl. That being said, I completely understand why this album got the response it did. Upon release, Metal Machine Music was absolutely savaged by critics. Rolling Stone described it as the tubular groanings of a galactic refrigerator, and would eventually receive a 1-star rating in the Rolling Stone Album Guide, a feat it would duplicate when being reviewed by the Chicago Tribune and Record Collector. Q magazine seemed to have a particular vendetta against it, placing it in their lists of terrible records by great artists, career suicides, and overall worst albums of all time. Some critics weren't as harsh towards it. Robert Christgau said that it wasn't totally unlistenable, a remark that seems glowing when compared to what other people said. Lester Bangs wrote, "As rock and roll, it's interesting garage electronic rock and roll. As a statement, it's great. As a giant you, it shows integrity, a sick, twisted, dunced-out, malevolent, perverted, psychopathic integrity, but integrity nonetheless." I'm pretty sure that counts as a compliment. As the years went on, it began to be appreciated for its influence in the genre of noise music. Pitchfork would even give it an 8.7 when reviewing it, although that's not usually something to brag about. Regardless, Metal Machine Music demonstrated that Lou Reed has no qualms whatsoever about making controversial albums. Our second player in today's video is a band from California called Metallica. Forming in 1981, Metallica gained icon status in the metal scene with landmark albums such as Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All. It was 1991's The Black Album, however, that gained them mainstream attention that no other metal band has ever really gotten, selling 22 million copies. The next 2 albums, Load and Reload, would be less successful, ranging in quality from decent to meh. In 2003, they put out Saint Anger, which proved to be highly controversial due to its lack of guitar solos, bloated runtime, and meme-worthy drum sound. Like Metal Machine Music, it's proven to be rather popular amongst a select few, to where the Metallica subreddit has a post flair for weekly Saint Anger defense post. By 2011, the backlash from this album had died down a bit, and that's where Metallica and Lou Reed, having already crossed paths before, decided to work on an album. On Halloween 2011, they released Lulu. To put it gently, a lot of people didn't like Lulu. Pitchfork gave it a 1 out of 10, describing it as a frustratingly noble failure. Writing for Grantland, Chuck Klosterman wrote, "If the Red Hot Chili Peppers acoustically covered the 12 worst Primus songs for Starbucks, it would still be slightly better than this." And perhaps the harshest review, Julian Marszalek of The Quietist claimed that time would better be spent watching gas grow or doing something with a sock. It did have its defenders, however. J.R. Moores of Drowned in Sound gave it a 10 out of 10 rating, which he had to clarify wasn't a joke. Writing for The Atlantic, James Parker encouraged readers to give Lulu a shot. Give it another listen, and you will be rewarded. In a piece published the day of Lou's 2013 passing, Robert Christgau claimed that the record didn't get the praise it should have, and David Bowie himself apparently told Reed's widow that the album was his greatest work. You're probably thinking by now, well, Robbie, what do you think about Lulu? Well, I'll admit that before the making of this video, I hadn't really listened to it. However, I finally did grow a pair and check it out. I'm going to be going over each song on Lulu and try and answer the question, is Lulu really that bad? One of the first things I noticed about the album is its length. It's 87 minutes spread across 2 discs, although that's assuming you actually bought the CD version instead of just streaming it. There are 2 songs over 11 minutes, and the closing track is 19 and a half minutes. Are you Metallica have been known to write long songs in the past. I mean, Master of Puppets is 8.5 minutes long, and many of their best songs push past the 6-minute mark. However, seeing the lengths of some of these tracks definitely intimidated me a bit. Okay, enough stalling, I'll get to the actual music. A great opening track can really elevate an album, quality-wise. Smells Like Teen Spirit, Seven Nation Army, and even Metallica's own Black Album, which kicked things off with the monster radio single, Enter Sandman. This album starts off with a song called Brandenburg Gate. The track begins with rather pleasant acoustic guitar chords, although it's not too long before Lou Reed's singing kicks in, and you get an idea of how weird this album is going to be. The opening lyrics are interesting. I would cut my legs and tits off when I think of Boris Karloff and Kinski in the dark of the moon. Alrighty then. The rest of the song is Reed ranting over simple riffage while James periodically interjects to yell, "Small Town Girl." I should mention that this album was apparently inspired by German playwright Frank Wedekind's plays Erdegeist and Die Büchse der Pandora, generally referred to as the Lulu plays. They tell the story of a young dancer who rises in society through her relationships with wealthy men, but eventually falls into poverty and prostitution. I suppose this kind of explains the small town girl line. This feels like one of those opening tracks that aren't meant to be listened to on their own, but rather are best enjoyed when listened to within the context of the whole album. Well, I'm definitely curious, so let's see what the rest of the songs are like. The next track is the album's only single, The View. This song features Metallica playing a sort of repetitive groove while Lou Reed talks over them. His lyrics feature lines like, I want to see your suicide. I want to see you give it up, your life of reason. I want you on the floor in a coffin, your soul shaking. Which seems like they have a deeper meaning, but are too cryptic to really understand. The chorus features James Hetfield chanting various things he supposedly is, one of which being, I am the table, which got absolutely memed to death. Genius says that this line is a reference to the table where Jesus had his Last Supper, but that still doesn't excuse how unintentionally funny the line is. I will say that this song is actually pretty decent. The riffs, while a bit repetitive, are pretty catchy and fun to listen to. The song even features one of Kirk Hammett's signature wah-heavy guitar solos. I would definitely rather listen to one of Metallica's classic songs over this, but it's still definitely enjoyable. This is followed by Pumping Blood. It kicks off with some nice ambient sounding strings, which are a recurring theme on this album. We then get a nice groovy riff while Lou sings over it, although it sounds like he's having trouble staying in time. The song is a great example of how well done the album is, instrumentally speaking, since not only do we get the nice strings and a nice heavy riff, but there's a really nice clean interlude partway through. This song definitely has some very strange lyrics. This is a good album, but I sent my girlfriend the lyrics because they remind me of our relationship, and now she won't talk to me. This is one of the songs on the album that are sung entirely by Reed, and his singing on this track is honestly a bit unsettling. Mistress Dread, the next song, has a riff that honestly would have sounded right at home on a classic Metallica album, which was a pleasant surprise. This is unfortunately slightly ruined by Lou Reed doing his talk singing thing over it, which doesn't really fit. Metallica really are taking a less is more approach in terms of composition, since each song only has like 3 or 4 riffs, and this is no exception. One thing I do like about this track is the ambient strings that continue for almost the entire runtime, which has a very uneasy effect. Iced Honey features something that metal music doesn't usually make use of: major keys. It fits quite well, and the song itself is pretty good. This is definitely a more straightforward, to-the-point track, and I don't really have a whole lot to say about it as far as the instruments go. The lyrics are definitely pretty interesting. You can't put a butterfly in a jar if the effort's too high, no matter who you are. You can't catch the moon or the sun or the stars, it doesn't matter who you are. They seem to allude to something regarding trying to capture beauty. Genius claims that the title, Iced Honey, refers to the fact that freezing and then thawing honey makes it taste better, but that's an unreviewed annotation, so who really knows? Cheat on Me is a quiet, slow burn track of the album. It starts out with slow strings, which sets the tone quite nicely. This is the first really long song on the album, at 11 minutes. It definitely doesn't need to be that long, although it's enjoyable enough. At this point in the listening process, my notes kind of became the same thing for each song, so from here on out, I don't have a great deal to say about the individual tracks, I'm warning you. Frustration is another song that's really good as far as the songwriting on Metallica's part. The riffs have a decent amount of groove to them. At one point, it cuts to just Lou ranting while Lars plays some sparse drum riff, which is unique, I suppose. Little Dog is a song that's just Lou doing his thing over some simple acoustic guitar. There are also some ambient guitar effects in the background. Pretty good, I guess. Dragon starts out with some ranting by Lou, which I actually found kind of interesting to listen to in a weird way. The song has another great Metallica riff, and there's a really good guitar solo as a change of pace. The solo itself sounds very unsteady, if that makes sense. There are a lot of wah effects and bending. Definitely a nice touch. The album closer, Junior Dad, definitely intimidated me with its 19.5-minute runtime. However, the final 8 minutes are just string effects that can be skipped over at no cost. The song is definitely the highlight of a pretty bland second half of the album. The somber guitar riff that it focuses on is quite beautiful to listen to, and Lou's vocals fit quite well. The lyrics on this one are worth talking about. As the title suggests, this song focuses on the idea of father figures and them being there for their sons, with lyrics like, "Would you come to me if I was half drowning, an arm above the last wave? Would you come to me? Would you pull me up? Would the effort really hurt you?" The most powerful lyrics, I feel, are toward the end. "Get the coffee, turn the lights on, say hello to Junior Dad. The greatest disappointment. Age withered him and changed him into Junior Dad." My interpretation is that these lyrics refer to someone whose father wasn't there for them when they were young, and as a result, they had to mature early on and be their own father figure to look up to, but that's just me. While recording this song, James Hetfield and Kirk Hammett were apparently reduced to tears. Kirk had lost his father only a few weeks prior to the album recording process, while James had a strained relationship with his own father, with him leaving his family when he was a child and leaving him to be raised by his mother and half-brother. I'm definitely glad this song ended up being as good as it is, and it's a perfect way to close the album. Now, to answer the question that titles this video, is Lulu really that bad? Honestly, I'd have to say no. It's definitely a challenge to get through at times. The combination of Metallica's instrumentation and Lou Reed's spoken word vocals don't really click at points, and the second half of the album really does drag. That being said, there aren't really many points on the album where I explicitly thought, man, that was bad. Not to mention that, as I said, there are definitely bright spots on the album. I've already mentioned how much I liked The View and Junior Dad, but even some of the more forgettable songs have good moments in them. Honestly, even if I didn't enjoy the parts that I did, I don't think I would have been able to dislike this album, because, well, its intentions were just too wholesome. Metallica was probably excited as hell to have a chance to work with an artist they had grown up listening to, and I can't help but feel happy for them that they got such an opportunity. I feel happy for Lou Reed too. He outright said he was only into music for the fun of it. So, as long as he enjoyed making this album, that's all that really matters, I guess. As drummer Lars Ulrich put it, in some way, it's almost cooler that people didn't embrace it because it makes it more ours. It's our project, our record, and this was never made for the masses, and the masses didn't take to it. It makes it more precious for those who are involved. On October 22nd, 2013, 4 days before the album's 2nd anniversary, Lou Reed passed away at the age of 71 from liver disease. Lulu would be the final recording of his lifetime. In the time following his death, the music community reflected on his achievements. They discussed the acclaimed releases such as The Velvet Underground and Nico and Transformer. They also discussed his experimentations such as Metal Machine music. Personally, I think Lulu ought to be discussed among those. I'm not in any way implying that it's one of his better works, but rather it stands as a great example of his desire to explore new boundaries. The same thing goes for Metallica. They had already solidified their status as metal gods, and they decided to explore this freedom by doing something nobody expected. Regardless of quality, at the very least, Lulu stands as an interesting discussion point in the discography of both Lou Reed and Metallica. If you're still watching by this point, I just want to say thank you so much for giving me your time. If you like what you saw, be sure to like and hit subscribe. I upload videos whenever I can, and I always have a ton of fun making them. Hopefully you have as much fun watching them. If you have an idea for a topic you want me to cover, leave it down in the comments. Who knows, maybe I'll get to it. I'm RobbieJ2734. I will see you when I see you next.